until we address issues of ethics and equality and diversity and acceptance, we will really not make any progress. So anyway, that was one of my little contributions there. I'd like to go to Zubair now to wrap up the corporate side of this discussion. Not wrap up, but at least initially address that. He's been a senior banker. He's lived and worked all over the world and so on. How do you see things at this moment in time, Zubair, in terms of what's happening in corporate Pakistan? And what are the emerging new corporate trends that are there in very practical ways?
You know, when you think about corporate Pakistan, for me, at Citibank, which is where by far the bulk of my career was invested and built, if I compare the other countries first where I worked, you know, when I left Pakistan, I was in Jordan. There, the majority of employees at the bank were women. Not only that, but the majority of people in the management committee of the bank were women. And when I was transferred from Jordan, the person who replaced me was a Jordanian woman. Then, you know, some years later, I was in Turkey. Very similar situation. More women at all levels. When I eventually came back to Pakistan, one of the issues that I was confronted with, and I think I suspect this is common to corporate society here, was that when we were hiring at the executive level, the majority of bright candidates were women from the business schools, for example. And therefore, the majority of people that we hired were women. But then if you looked at the other end of the scale, which was the management committee, out of 12 people, there was one woman. And, you know, we started questioning this. And what we found was that between 80 to 90% of those bright young women that we would hire from the MBAs here, for example, within the first 3 years, they would be gone. And they would not go, you know, to other banks, to competitors. So it wasn't a simple, you know, issue of how are you handling your people overall in terms of compensation, etc., etc. It seemed to be something different. And, you know, we started asking around. We interviewed the existing women at the bank. We looked at the exit interviews of those who had left. We talked around to actually those who had departed from the bank and, you know, went back to them to ask. And what came out was the obvious, you know, a large number left because they got married. And the marriage circumstances did not enable them to work in the same way. A smaller number, about 20%, left because they were migrating. The husbands were migrating to some other country, and therefore they had no choice but to leave. And, you know, one would think that multinational corporations, because they're in so many countries, you know, would think of something like that and would say, you know, while we're going to hire the husband in so-and-so place, we'll also talk to the wife and we'll see what we can do for her. You know, unfortunately, very few think like that. But the point was, you know, that we had never really focused on the issue that they would go through major life changes. You know, the fact that most of them would get married, we should be able to anticipate. We should be able to plan for it. Because we were ending up losing high quality resources. And of course, they were ending up losing career opportunities. You know, so we set about thinking what we could do. I don't want to make this a Citibank story, but one point that I'll make there is that you know, what we learned was that we had to be very, very flexible with them once the life circumstances changed. They did not know, and we did not really know how long that change would be. With some, it could be a much longer term change. With some, it could just be, you know, maternity period. But the fact was that their lives were changing. And what we decided initially was not to come up with hard and fast policy changes, but just to be much more open and to listen to each case individually and to provide mentoring, as they were going through these changes when other people were moving faster, who were their peers, who may be less competent. How would they deal with these things?
Zubair, can I just stop you there, please? Because I think you hit a couple of quick, very interesting points there, and I'd like to drill down. You're a CEO, a lady applies, there are two MBAs or two very highly qualified people coming in, mid-20s, as Asad said so. And one is very, very likely to leave in 2-3 years' time, get married, have kids, and so on. And the other guy will commit life, soul, and everything, which is the man. Who would you hire? Because that's the key question that keeps coming up again and again, is that in everything else being equal, equal intellect, equal commitment at the time of hiring, but on a 5-year cycle, in 3 years, you at Citibank will move to your next job. You want results today. You don't want some lady to be trained for 12 months and then swan off to the United States or something like that. Those are the practical issues, and what do you do about that?
See, that's obviously a central question. And there are several aspects to it, because what we were finding was that because we expected them to leave, we were no longer investing in them. They were not getting the same training, they were getting second-rate treatment on promotions, on salary increases, and so on. So the whole thing became self-perpetuating, and even those who stayed would want to leave. Now, to come specifically to your question, you mentioned that on the one side you have this woman who may leave in 2-3 years, and on the other side you have a man who, is committed for life. The fact is, the man is not committed for life. The fact is, the reality is, what I have learned, over many, many years, is that the continuity levels with women officers and employees has always been greater. Wherever I have worked, has always been greater than with the men. The men will job hop much more. So if you can take on the challenge of finding ways to keep that woman engaged in the corporation, I think that is a much better investment, and that is what we did.
Absolutely,
and no regrets there at all.
Yeah, I'm asking the question in a controversial way to actually get to the core of the issues, because I think it is a very hard issue there. So a follow-up question, and then we'll get to the rest of the panel, is it that all of the things, the wonderful things that we keep talking about of training, and Asad spoke about improving the quality of transportation and so on, all absolutely necessary. But is it fundamental at this moment in time to change our thinking, our attitudes, retrain our parents, and retrain society both religiously and culturally as a fundamental starting point before we even talk about work? Because these challenges become insurmountable at the time. Is that the starting point?
I don't think so. I think when we talk about such lofty ambitions, frankly, they take forever to achieve. What you have to do, as you mentioned earlier in the Obama context, was to act now. If you start thinking about the fact that you will have to change a lot of attitudes and you will have to wait till they are changed, that will be forever. Who knows who will be alive at that time. I think you have to take each issue, take the bull by the horns, make a decision that will show the way you're going, that will show your direction, and that will drive change in that way.
Great. Thank you,
I'd like to leave one other point on this change issue,
Yes.